everyone. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Your Circumstance. I am very excited today. We have another great guest. I'm going to quickly introduce her with all the things that she has going on. So, this is Sapna, and she empowers parents who want lives filled with connection, authenticity, purpose, laughter, and resilience. She is a certified conscious parenting coach, NLP practitioner, and author of the book Yelling to Zenning. Sapna is also a recognized speaker who, through connected storytelling, provides insights and strategic tools that motivate her audiences and clients to accept who they are at this moment so that they can move forward where they want to be. Her work has been featured in various outlets, including WFAA, ABC Dallas, The List, and Newsweek, just to name a few. And when she isn't teaching, she's enjoying adventure and traveling around the world with her family, which is awesome. So welcome, Sapna. I'm so glad to have you today on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. This is such pleasure.
So I am really interested in just having some meaningful conversation with you today. And you viewers that are watching on YouTube or listening today, my audience is moms. And every week we talk about a certain situation, challenge, or thing that's going on in our lives as moms because there's always a challenge. There's always a challenge. But I really want to hear more from Sapna on a challenge that she's experienced. And also because she's a parenting coach, she's going to provide a lot more insight on how to manage this thing called mom life. And so I'm just going to let you take it away. You can give maybe some sort of intro. You're a mom of how many kids and stuff like that.
Oh,
So they can get background. We got your professional background, but maybe a little personal background, and then share with us a challenge that you were able to overcome.
yeah, sure. That's really great that you're asking me how I came over a challenge, but it all started with my son. I'm a mom of one boy. He's a teenager now, but the story goes way back when he was about a couple of years old. And I had this issue of constantly losing my cool with my child. I didn't realize how detrimental it was getting until he was about, I would say, three-ish, four, close to four. And I had been potty training him for a while then, right? At that age, I think 3 years, you start potty training. And I remember walking into my house one day. I was in my house, but it was quiet. I'd finished up my work and I'm like, why is my house so quiet? And I started looking for my son at that point, and I go looking for him, and he's in the bathroom at that point. And I noticed that he was taking care of his accident by himself without wanting me involved. And as soon as he saw me, he was startled and terrified was the word that I saw on his face. He was so scared that I found him there. The look on his face was, I could see a reflection of maybe he's seeing some kind of a scary monster. That was the look on his face. And I was shocked. So, this is what I had been doing. I had epiphany at that moment. I had scared my son to that point that this tiny little child was so scared to come to me. He had started to take care of himself in whatever. It's besides the point that he was making it more messy than it actually was. But the point that he didn't want to come to me because he had become so scared of my adult tantrums, so to say, that he was scared. And I thought this child has to come to me when he has an issue. But he had started taking care of himself. That means I have not created a safe environment for him to come to me. Something needs to change. By then I had started on this journey that I was yelling, I was feeling guilty, I knew this was not right, and this was already bubbling under. And this story where I tell you, like, found my son terrified, was what pushed me over the edge. I thought I had to do something, otherwise I was going to lose this precious relationship that I have with my son. And that's what led me to my quest to find out, why am I yelling, what can I do differently, how can I stick. I didn't even know these words at that point. I knew I needed to make a change. I knew something was off, and I didn't want to feel so guilty all the time, be in the cycle, this pattern of losing it, yelling, then feel guilty, then repair. Something needed to change. So I went on Best. Started reading books, taking courses, implementing them, failing multiple times. I'm not going to say just worked. So failed multiple times, got back on, tried, tested. And over the years, then as I started getting better and better, people started asking me, hey, you're doing something different. Something is different about you and your son. Can you tell us? That led me into parent coaching, and I teach what I learned from various schools. I put it into one combined, compact, easy, accessible, fast, quicker, step by step format. My courses, in my coaching practices, also in my book. So
Yeah.
parents reflect and actually turn the mirror and see what's going on within them. On my journey, this is what I have learned, Stephanie. It's always about the parent. Parenting is about the parent. The child is just being a child. That's what they are supposed to do. They are supposed to push the buttons. They're supposed to be awkward. They're supposed to throw tantrums because they are new in this world. When we go into a new house, what are we doing? We don't know where the cupboards are, where the salt is, like a new kitchen. We're trying to find our ground in the world. It's the same way in the new house, the same way a child comes in. They're figuring out. So, mom, it's a dad. What do I need to say? How do I talk? How do I walk? But during this process, while they're trying to figure out, the parents' anxiety steps in, blocking that, not letting the natural progression to take place. And I was anxious, Stephanie. Most of the time, I was anxious. I felt, I was raising my son here, away from my family back in India, and they were all there, and I didn't have any help. I was a mom. My husband was working. I was working. And I had these set beliefs which I really needed to check into. This has to be like that. I had to be look a certain way. My son has to do a certain way. He has to be quiet. He has to be obedient. He has to respect me. I had these like a checklist. And then when my son was not matching that, I was going crazy because I thought this is what he needs to be done in parenting.
Mhm.
And because it was not working out that way, I felt like a failure. I'm a bad mom because somehow others are getting it right. I felt all these emotions. And I didn't have that support group. And I was told, you will know what to do. You have to enjoy your parenting. It doesn't last. I was not feeling any of those. I was feeling miserable most of the time. Nobody was talking about what parents go through at that moment. And there was no support. There were steps, there were a lot of books that told me, say this to your child, put them in timeout during this time, do this, do that.
Mhm.
That was working. So I needed to figure out, forge my own way. And during that quest is when I came upon conscious parenting. Then I became a conscious parenting coach. I got trained in conscious parenting method. I got trained in NLP, the linguistic part of it. And I got trained in compassionate inquiry. And as I started getting trained in these different schools, I quit my corporate job. And this is what I do for a living now. And my son is 16. And I would say my quest to figure out the answers is what saved our relationship. On another way, down south, if I had followed my own old ways of parenting.
So, a couple questions that come to mind because I've had my own experiences with my kids. I have twin 6 year olds and then
Ooh.
a 3 year old. So, there's three and they drive me crazy as children do. And I had a series of yelling as well. And I found that when I would yell, not only would they feel like inferior, maybe like mommy doesn't love me or just sad, I would have bent up anxiety and it would affect me mentally. And so what I often think of is how that's deep rooted in how we were brought up ourselves. Do you feel that way too?
Oh, yeah, a lot of it. In conscious parenting, we talk about the myths of parenting that parents have bought into. Some, I'll just name a few because of the lack of time. Parenting is about raising a good and a bad child. Now, who's a good child? Anybody who does not stir the pot too much,
Right.
listens to us, is a good child. Who pushes our limits is a bad child, right? We're supposed to raise a successful child. Who's a successful child? Somebody who's ahead of the curve, who reaches all those markers that the society, the culture has put in. parenting is about raising a good child. They think, what else? There's 7 core myths in conscious parenting that I talk about. So when we believe these myths, life is not like that. Life comes with its own challenges. So when, let's say, my child is not being good, what does good mean? Let's say, I'll tell you a quick story. My friend had come over one time when my child was younger, and I had told him before, see, I have my friend coming over, we have something important to discuss, do not come and disturb. This friend of mine comes in, and my son every 10 minutes would come and say, Mom, I need this. Mom, I need that. And I was feeling anxious because I thought good kid would listen to me, meaning leave me alone. Good kid would not disturb their mother. Good kid would respect what the mother wants. But he was not doing any of it.
Right.
So what happened was I was getting all anxious because I thought, what will my friend think? I'm not a good mom. I haven't taught him respect to rules and all that stuff. See, so much is going on in that moment in my head. And what do? I would say, leave me alone, otherwise I'll punish you. Or I would yell at him or take him out and put him on timer. All those things. So that's one of those. But we have so many rules. We are the providers. So they have to respect us. Parents should know better. And there's a hierarchy there. I am the parent. So you have to respect me. So many rules and uh, myths that we carry. That is what. And where have we carried this from? From our families, from the culture, from our society. And we
Yes.
have asked one time, is this true? Or is this working for me? Because we think if we don't follow that script, something is wrong with us. Somehow we might be, and this goes back, Stephanie, back to the caveman days, that we had to be part of a group. We had to follow those rules. Because if you are ostracized from that group, you become separate. That means you are more vulnerable to the animals in the forest. It really means death, right? You're alone, vulnerable, there's no protection. So it comes down from there. We are so scared to be alone. We're scared to be apart. We want to fit in. We want to belong in the group. So blindly we follow like robots what the culture says.
Mm.
That affects our relationship with our children.
Yeah.
What if, I thought, what if I chose my son over the whole world? How would that be? Because he would tell me when he got a little bit older, you care about what others think, care about what I think. I was caring about what the whole world was thinking. When
Mm.
I started putting that aside and choosing, it's scary. I'm not going to say it's easy.
Yeah.
It's scary. And you'll feel alone, you'll feel scared. That's where you need that support system. Think alike, you have somebody to mentor. I was lacking in those. This is what I provide in my coaching practices and in my group coaching, the support, the mentorship, where you don't feel you're alone when you're going forging this new path, right? Now suddenly you have to choose your child. What does that mean? My child doesn't want to do math. What can we do? My child doesn't want to do art. What can we do? But if you are coming from that background where you're told you have to be good at math, you have to be good at sports, or you have to do this, da 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 da, then it'll be scary for you to forge that new path. So you have to break away from the past, the known, what we have been told, what others tell you. It's hard. And,
Absolutely.
and that starts by connecting to ourselves, connecting to what our heart says, connecting to what my intuition says. Connection to your child starts from connecting to yourself.
Absolutely. One thing I think about, because again, going back to the yelling, what you were talking about is how do we, number one, deal with
Mhm.
ourselves? So we got to connect with ourselves. But two, how do we deal with the situation? So,
Yeah.
like, if your child is just deliberately pushing your buttons and deliberately not listening to what you said, the automatic response, which you've mentioned before, is to punish them. So, is that wrong? Or is there a different method when it comes to them disobeying or not listening or whatever?
The conscious parenting method, we completely step away from disciplining. Now, what does that mean? We don't let them run unruly. It's not that. So, when a child does something that we don't want them to do, let's say, first we check in what's going on within me. If we are getting triggered, if they're pushing the buttons, the
Mhm.
question to ask is, why do we have those buttons in the first place? Because the child is being a child, like I say again. But when we are calm, let's say, I'll give you an example, Stephanie. I want you to think of a time when your child annoyed you. Just briefly think of a time. What were your feelings at that moment? What did you feel?
Overwhelmed.
Quickly, because of the lack of time. Now, I want you to think of a time where you felt really good about yourself. Really good. Maybe you had your favorite meal, you were with a loved one, you got complimented, you feel good about your body. Can you tap into a moment like that?
Mm,
Yeah. Can you remember when you felt really good about yourself?
yeah,
Okay. Now, imagine while you're feeling this good, your child does the same behavior. How would you react?
probably differently.
The reaction is the same. Act or your child is same. The way we react to that depends on how we are feeling. Because I can give tons of tools. I can say, Stephanie, say this, do this. I can give you hundreds of tools. That comes later, but it starts from by tapping into our state of being first. Once we do that, there are tons of tools. It's like a toolbox. I can give you hundreds of tools. But
Mhm.
once you tap into yourself, you'll know which tool to use. Maybe you need a screwdriver at that point. Maybe you need a Stephanie, a spanner at that point. You can pick the tool, but knowing which tool to use comes from tapping into yourself.
Yeah.
Another example with my son. So I used to take my son to Costco, and he used to hate Costco. He would throw big tantrums. He would cry. He would not enter the store. And I was thinking, he's doing this deliberately. He knows we need this, and he's doing this, and he doesn't want to enter. But what I realized while doing this work was I was panicking because I thought other parents were judging me for his behavior. So I would get all worked up. So once I shifted from that to being calm, I started expecting he doesn't like, he's going to throw a tantrum. What can I do? Bring him a toy, do this, do the strategies. I realized he's scared of big spaces. Big spaces scare him. Once I could attune to that fear, easy. I know this big spaces scare you. How can I help you? Maybe I would not take him to Costco. Maybe if it's that scary, I would go and it's convenient for me to leave him with his dad. Or maybe I would put on music, headphones, and he can focus on something during the time when I'm shopping. Or maybe I can talk to him before. What do you think helps? He would say, I want to hold on to my blankie at that point. Strategies multiple, but I was able to get to the strategy once I could calm myself down. Connecting to myself needs to happen first.
Now, talking with you, obviously, we're hearing about all these different ways to approach parenting and overcoming some of that overwhelming stress. But how does just any mom can come to that conclusion? I know for me, it took a while to realize something's going on inside of me and it needs to stop because I don't like the way I feel when I'm yelling at them. But in the heat of the moment, automatically think that. Mhm.
Yeah. So the key moment you said is first you didn't like what you felt, right? That's the
Yeah.
key. If it's over and over again, something needs to change.
Mm.
Because what is insanity? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. First, wanting change. That's the first big step. Second, once you want to change, then there are so many ways. You can take so many routes. One of the routes is you don't like when you're going for a test, you do not study during the test, right? You practice before and
Right.
you prepare for the test.
Mm.
So we train the parents to be prepared for those moments when they're lacking energy. We prepare when the parent is ready to explode. We prepare or it happens. So if you think your child is going to do, you would have seen, right? Maybe he or she doesn't want to come home from the park. Maybe that's a big struggle for one parent. Maybe child doesn't want to sit on and do homework. Maybe that's a struggle for the parent. Maybe they spilled, they don't know, they don't have a certain skill and they're not waking up early in the morning. So once you figure out that something needs to change, then zone in on the issue and notice that this is happening over and over again. What can we do differently? Am I losing it? Then you start preparing for those moments. Oh, my child doesn't want to come home from the park. What can we do? Then there are steps. For example, if my nephew doesn't want to come home from the park, so we had to train my sister to. He doesn't want to come. So what do? We tell him before going to the park, you have to come after an hour. And then when you're closing in on that 1 hour, she starts 15 minutes before. We have to leave in 15 minutes or 15 minutes. Then she says 10 minutes. Then she says 5 minutes. They start winding down, queen into leaving,
Mm.
and still throws a tantrum. She's ready to pick him up, take him, put him in the car. She's ready. She's prepared. She knows this is going to happen. This is going to happen. I'm going to pick him up, put him in the car. He will throw a big tantrum. He'll kick and he'll ball. She's ready. So what does she do for that? She needs to have her meal before all this happens.
Yeah,
Gear up, sort of like gearing up for this. And then it becomes a habit. Oh, I know, I'm going to the park. He needs this toys. I need to eat. I need my tea. I need my energy.
that makes sense. Totally. The other thing that came to mind, and it's also something that is part of my own family, is two parents. Now, do you usually work with one parent? You work with both parents? Is one not on board with the other? Because sometimes we have different views.
Wow, you won't believe it. This is the number one question I get asked during my talks.
Mhm.
What if my spouse is not on board? And
Mhm.
the answer is always one conscious parent is better than two unconscious ones. So you just need one parent to have the conscious approach. And then you can actually, the conflict is kind of good because the child gets to see what it looks like when two people are having conflicts. So you're teaching them solution skills
Yeah.
because they get, okay, mom thinks like this, dad thinks like this. How did they come into a solution? Or if it's a little bit higher, if the conflicts are higher, then you say, your dad thinks like this, I think like that. What do you can get to choose. But if it's even more higher, having constant battle over things, then it's a relationship between the parents more than the child. That is something they need to solve it before bringing the child. And if it goes higher than that, then there's something more serious that the conscious parent has to take some real strong action. So there are, depends on what level the couple is. But
Mhm.
I always say one conscious parent is always enough.
Yeah, that's good. I often feel like even in my own line of work where I work with moms in their fitness journey, they have a struggle with their spouse because it could be a couple of things, but number one is that they're like, I have to prepare a different meal than my spouse, and they don't want to eat healthy. I am eating healthy, so it's a struggle because I'm tempted by the food that I have to prepare for them. And the biggest thing is that you can't change someone else, even if they're your spouse. You
Right.
can't change them, but you can lead by example. And so a lot of times, and I've seen it, my husband has changed from the way I've changed, and I've seen other clients' husbands change. They're kind of hard-headed and set in their own ways, but as they see their spouse changing, it's like infectious. And it's like, wait a minute, they're happier, they're healthier, they look good. They must be doing something right.
Right.
So, it's lead by example and trust that they're gonna follow, you know what I mean?
Exactly the same way.
So
That somehow my children have a better relationship with the mother. Maybe that she's doing something right. Let me check out this conscious parent thing.
totally. So, do you have any last minute words of encouragement for moms that are struggling as they're listening to this podcast today? Maybe they're struggling with their own kids, maybe they're first time moms, they don't know how to deal with it, or maybe they grew up in a yelling home when they were kids. Any kind
Yeah.
of words of encouragement for them?
Yeah. I would say notice the parts that are talking to you. Maybe you feel that something needs to change. Maybe you feel you need to rest today. Maybe you feel you need to have the conversation today. Maybe you need to ask for help today. Whatever that is, notice that. And then maybe take one small action. Maybe ask for 1 hour of somebody to take care of your children so you can nap. Maybe have some tea ready if you have too many things going on. Maybe call up a friend and say, I'm struggling today. Take one little step towards health, towards yourself, towards connecting with yourself first.
That's good. That's really good. I often think about not only parenting now with the little
Mhm.
ones, but I think about my relationship with my mom now and how that still is challenging, even though I'm not a little child, but there's some unresolved things that we never really worked on. And so there's buttons that are pushed too as you're an adult dealing with your adult parent, which I feel is just so crucial to really recognize that you need to
Right.
do something now with your own children. The
Yes. Yes, because
relationship is stronger than ever.
that's so true because we don't want to pass on those buttons to them, right?
Mhm,
Because patterns keep repeating itself. So saying this is where it stops, meaning you're not going to pass on those buttons to them. You're
mhm.
going to those buttons within yourself.
Right. Exactly. Well, I love this conversation, and it also is something near and dear to my heart because, like I said, I struggle with my own patterns of yelling with my children. And you know what? There's always going to be struggles. As your kids grow up, there's new challenges for every stage of their life. And we just got to really hold on to those tools to just keep being able to overcome those challenges as they come. But if anyone's listening today and this really resonated with you, you're struggling in your own parenting journey, and you feel like you need to take that extra step to really help you get through just the craziness, we've just had enough. I know I've had enough quite a few times. But if you feel like you can benefit from maybe working with someone like Sapna, who is experienced in this in her own journey as a mom and working with clients, then I'm going to give Sapna the floor to tell you how you can work with her or just follow her and know more about what she does.
Thank you, Stephanie. People can follow me on my Instagram or Facebook page, that is Sapna Rad Coaching. And they can definitely connect with me on my website, sapnarad.com. And I offer a free one on one consultation for any first timers.
That's great. I'm so glad you were on the show today. I will leave her information in the show notes down below so you can grab that. That's it for today's episode. Hey guys, what a wonderful podcast episode we just had with our special guest, Sapna, who is the conscious parenting coach, something that's so needed in this day and age because parenting isn't easy. Let's just face it. If you're a parent listening today, you know you've gone through your own challenges raising your child, whether you're a single mom or a mom that is working 9 to 5, has a lot of different duties. Maybe you're a mompreneur. Maybe you and your spouse aren't seeing eye to eye on parenting, whatever it may be. There are so many challenges that we face from infancy, even from pregnancy, carrying them all the way till they're adult children. We never stop being moms. And one of the things that has resonated with me as a Christian, and this is a faith-based podcast, is that we have to fully rely on God when it comes to these challenges because we can't do it on our own. Let that sink in for you today. We cannot do this alone, and we weren't meant to do this life alone. And so I want to encourage you to really press in hard. And I wanted to share a scripture with you today. And it's from Philippians 4:6-7. And it states, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. You see, this passage encourages us as parents to turn to God in prayer in all situations, especially in parenting, because it is one of the most challenging things we face. It promises that God's peace, which is beyond our understanding, will protect and provide a sense of calm in the midst of parenting storms. It underscores the importance of relying on God's for peace and wisdom rather than succumbing to anxiety and frustration. And as I shared earlier, I dealt with so much anxiety as I was trying to reprimand my kids for not listening and disobeying and going against what I said. And it just would infuriate me. And I just didn't know how else to react, to respond. I felt like my children, as Sapna had mentioned, were bad. What classifies them as bad if it's just solely the fact that they're not respecting what I say? But how can I hold them to the same standard and regard to me? I am a grown woman and they are just children, very young children. They are still developing, they are still learning, they are testing the waters. And I really needed to have that awareness that I'm not speaking to another adult. I'm not speaking to someone that should know better. They need to learn better and they need to see it through their parents. I need to model that to them. And so if I'm getting anxious and worked up and not relying on God and putting it all on them, how are they going to see anything differently than what I'm putting out? They need to know how to self regulate their own emotions. And I can't even do that most times. So I want to encourage you today that it is possible. It is possible to parent your children, be successful in it, and have a loving home for them to know that you love them and you want the best for them. But we need to start modeling that for them. We need to stop having these high expectations. Maybe your parents had that for you, and I get it. I had that same kind of thing going in the back of my head. This is what my parents modeled to me, and that's what their parents modeled to them. But we need to start changing these generational values into new, practical, real life, God centered values that work for your family. And it starts with putting God first in your family and dedicating your children to Him. And He, the God of peace, will help you discover that peace within you. He will bring the calm. He will bring the understanding and wisdom, and He will help you through the parenting storms. So I hope you were encouraged today with this podcast episode. It was a really good talk, and I hope you enjoyed it and be encouraged. Start getting centered and connected with yourself. Ask those tough questions before you start getting overworked, overwhelmed when you're dealing with your children. I'm your host, Stephanie Rell. And as always, I am so thankful for you tuning in to another episode of Beyond Your Circumstance. I can't wait to see you next week with our next special guest. Have a blessed day. Bye.